I woke up this morning with new wisdom on my mind. I know who I am. There's no need to hide. I got something to say. I'm thinking that it's time. Why? Cause I'm a young intellect. I'm a young intellect. I'm a young intellect. I'm a young intellect. Pay me my respect.
An open space where experiences and opinions are welcomed. Hosted by Andreas, Sam, and Mafwa. Hello and welcome, Young Intellects. This is your co-host, Mafwa, welcoming you to our open space to teach, learn, laugh, and love.
I am your co-host, Sam, here to encourage you to explore different ways to view the world at large.
And I'm your co-host, Andreas Renee, bringing you loads of realness and motivation into your everyday lives and minds.
So our next guest is a licensed clinical therapist and creator of Ridgle Consulting, which focuses on providing mental health therapy for professionals, primarily focused on mild to moderate mental health symptoms such as depression and anxiety. Our next guest recognizes the need to talk about and advocate for Black men's mental health, so she is also an ambassador of Restoring the King's mental wellness brand that is exclusively for Black men. She is a leader and works for the mental wellness of others, a truly selfless, beautiful soul. In saying all of that, we want to give a warm welcome to our guest, Nia Ridgle. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you guys so much for having me a part of the conversation. I really appreciate this opportunity to be here and just to be able to share the platform with your with information that is crucial to our mental wellness in these crucial times right now. So thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming.
Yes.
Yes, thank you. All right. So this is going to be a very interesting episode today because it focuses on something that's not usually talked about and should definitely be talked about around this day and age with everything going on.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So before we get into the topic for today, would you mind telling us a little bit about yourself, who you are and what it is that you do?
Yeah, so my name is Nia Ridgle. Thank you for pronouncing it correctly. That is like a gold star for you because I've heard it so many different diverse ways. I forget how it's pronounced. So thank you for reminding me of that. I appreciate that. Yes, thank you. So like I said, I am the owner of Ridgle Consulting. I'm a licensed clinical therapist, but I also created a brand called Restoring the King, and it's a mental wellness brand. And it's really kind of like my passion project that I'm really, driven and focused on right now. It's all around making Black men a part of the wellness conversation. And it kind of just fell into my lap around like helping and supporting Black men become a part of that conversation. So I'm just grateful and thankful to be here, especially to be a supporter in the wellness space for African American and for African diaspora people. And so I'm just honored to be here to talk about it. Thank you for the invite.
Thank you for coming here to talk that. Yeah, because mental health is a very huge issue, and as you said, Black men aren't really part of that conversation. So we really appreciate the fact that you are taking the initiative to make Black men part of that conversation, because we have fathers who are Black, and we might have brothers, cousins, and we may even have sons who are Black. So we want them to feel included.
And mental health is not only it's extremely important. It doesn't only affect the person that has the issue. It also affects everyone around them. I know in the Black community, people don't view mental health as serious. They don't take it as seriously. And especially I know for Caribbean people, they don't really think mental health exists. They really say oh, go to church and you'll feel better. So with that being said, many Black people face mental health issues and don't even know that they have mental health because it's not taken so serious. So this is very important to educate people about what's going on.
Yes. So we actually wanted to ask you a few questions just to start this off. So Anne, did you want to ask the first question?
Yeah, sure. So how long have you been a therapist for?
My whole life. I think one of the main things that I want to demystify is that mental health is different culturally, right? So we all want to think that mental health is this inclusive way of being and practicing styles and in different levels around that. But as I've become more self-aware of my own healing journey and been a participant in others, I really have realized that mental health is very, very culturally specific. And it's not a one-stop shop.
It's not. It's really not.
So I'm going to tailor this conversation to the authenticity of that, right? So I have been a therapist my entire life. It's a birthright. It's a generational gift that was handed down to me generationally, and it's really around like I'm extremely intuitive. I'm empathic, right? And growing up specifically, I lived in a really unsafe environment that I had to tune out my intuition and natural empathic ways because I would feel too much of the impact too much. And so as a protective factor for myself, I had to kind of disconnect emotionally in order to survive. So I was stuck in that survival mode brain. So I've always been very like I could see and resonate with other people's pain. And so that allows me the natural ability to connect with people on a very deep level. And so I remember the first time I counseled my mom, I was like 7 years old, like literally 7, telling my mom, I didn't grow up in a really stable household, which is, you know, it's normal in the Black community. And I was just telling her when I was 7, like, why don't you leave my dad? Like, why are you with him? If he makes you so unhappy, this is me at 7, okay? Having this conversation with her. And she just looked at me and she was like, you are a child. Like, but you can tell that I reflect back on that moment, and now me being a mother, like I had no business having that conversation with her. But I was intuitive enough to know that the conversation needs to be had, right? So why I say mental health for Black people and people are part of the diaspora is a gift that's passed down generationally, is that I was always born to be a therapist. It just wasn't labeled for me of what that was and what that looked like.
Wow, that's amazing.
That's a good story. Because like people feel like children don't know as much, but I think sometimes children know more than adults.
Yeah, we just, like, I know at a young age, it's usually just hide it because, you know, either your parent is going to snap at you for like, oh, this is none of your business, or stay out of grown folks' business. But in actuality, it affects us too.
Oh yeah, I just wanted to speak to that. Like, it's a survival mode technique, right? When your authority, the people in authority don't feel like a child should have authority, right? And so what that ends up doing is disaffirming our natural instincts, right? And so I had to end up, because I was so instinctual, work myself back to just that time where I didn't have that fear-based thinking around like taking care of myself.
And what was that like, getting back to that mode where you didn't have that?
A lot of self-compassion. A lot of self-compassion, because as you're shut out and shut down, you start to just normalize a lot of behavior that speaks against your natural being. And so for me, it was around like a lot of forgiveness work, because I had to really minimize myself in a lot of different capacities that I didn't realize I had minimized myself just to get back to that. And so before I can even like get back to that natural way of being, I had to do a lot of forgiveness work for playing small, for not valuing myself, for putting monetary gain on my gifts, for not sharing my gifts, for not speaking up. And so a way that I'm getting back to that is just honoring and respecting myself, right? Which was something that just through, you know, being shut down and shut out so many times, I just lost that sense of awareness. And so just getting back to that, like I said, is very culturally for people of the African diaspora. We get disaffirmed a lot, and not things that are just natural to us. And so a way to get back to that is just start showing up being who you are.
That's true.
Exactly. I understand that completely.
Yeah, and you said it's very cultural to African Americans or Africans in diaspora, and I'll say like that is so true because I've spoken to so many like black women and black men, and they will say the exact same thing, and this isn't necessarily how people of other races feel, and it kind of makes sense what you were saying at the beginning, how things are different culturally.
Yeah.
Mm. So what was like the driving factor for you to get out of that mindset or of I have to be shut out all the time? What was the push?
Mm.
Uh, Education. We talked a little bit about that before we started. I've always just had this natural drive, like to know why. Like, why do these things happen? Why do I have to shut up? And why can't I speak
Right.
my mind? I just had like that natural like push to just understand. Like to me, saying because I say so, said so was my mom's natural go-to thing to say. It just was never good
Mm-hmm.
enough. It was never good enough for me. And I think that once I started getting around the right environments that cultivated inquisitive thinking and didn't demean it or demonize it, I started to feel safe enough to ask those inquisitive questions. But first, I had to start with myself. Like, I think the most important thing when you are a practicing therapist or in a life coaching space is that you have to do the work on yourself first, really to make true change and impact in people's lives because you can't teach from a place of lacking in wisdom. And as we're all growing and evolving, we're on our different levels and having our different paths. Like I think that one of the things that we don't talk about in a therapeutic field is being in integrity with how you practice, right? And I think
Right.
that also too is aboriginal because you go and you get all this textbook information, but if you really haven't applied it to your lifestyle or yourself, well, you're teaching from a place of disadvantage rather than advantage. And I think that really affects people in their therapeutic experience.
I'm glad you mentioned that. I'm really glad you mentioned that because there's a lot of therapists who feel like even since they have those credentials, they can relate. But if you haven't went through the experience personally, how can you really like be there for someone in that type of manner?
Yeah.
So I kind of wanted to get like your opinion of like what does mental illness mean to you?
Yeah, okay, that's another cultural thing. So, what does mental wellness mean for Black people or people who are of pigmentation, right?
Right.
It means that we have to heal. So, mental health, and as a whole, is rooted in stigma, bias, and judgment. And it's a way to label people in their circumstances, in their situations, but specifically for the people of African descent we are naturally reacting to our environment. And that is not in the DSM. And that's a diagnostical tool that we utilize to diagnose people, but no way, shape, or form does it talk about institutionalized racism, discrimination, environmental, sociological factors, because it was not created to support people of African descent. And we're being judged by that, and we're labeling ourselves by that, and we're walking in that, and we're taking those labels on because we don't want to victimize ourselves and associate our struggle with the system. And for us, it's really just around assimilation. Not everybody's going to assimilate into a society that rejects you easily. Like we're going to have some mental health side effects to that, right?
Yeah.
Um, and so that's why I think the biggest thing, for people of African descent to really resonate with is am I responding in a mental health distress from a system that is perpetuating it, or is it something that I'm experiencing for myself?
Mm.
Mm.
And would you say like mental health illness can stem from like generational traumas and stuff?
Absolutely. That's the study of epigenetics. And it's basically they've done studies that show that DNA characteristic marks, genetic traits, are passed down in DNA. And when you're in survival mode, those genetic traits get triggered and you instantaneously respond to anything that came close to that type of traumatic experience. So let me give you an example. If you grew up and your family would had lineage to a war, right? Or let's take like in the States, right? Jim Crow when they were out there protesting, or like getting hung or anything like that was like traumatizing, right?
Right.
That impact was stored genetically in your ancestors' DNA. And when we talk about ancestors, we're not talking about 400 years ago, okay? We're talking about your grandma. So naturally, she or whoever is carrying that trait pass that down to you, and you instantaneously go into a trauma response to that. And it's a response that happens before you think about what you're doing. So, and it's, for instance, with police brutality, that's something that's generational for us. So naturally, our bodies are going to react to it in a visceral way because it's self-identifying as we're not safe, right? And we're going to check in with that. And so that's another thing I think that's missing as far as the educational piece in the mental wellness space, because we don't really give privilege to understanding our own responses to trauma and how that affects our mental health.
That is so true, because I'm literally reading a book now on healing like your family's patterns, and it literally says the same thing, and it says how as you were saying, if one of your ancestors, and it's not even, and it talks about 3 generations back, so up onto your great grandparents, you will react the exact same way as them, and you have to heal from it in order to be able to not pass it down to later generations that come. And I think it is an important topic that needs to be had in our community, especially because the way we react now, we think is just because of who we are, but it's because of what's happened before us. So when you say mental health has to do with healing, I totally understand that, because it is different for like African Americans and Africans in the diaspora, because we do need to heal, and we aren't suffering from the same we aren't suffering the same as other races, because we haven't been through the same, and our the things in our DNA is different.
Yeah, widely different.
Would you say it has a larger or greater effect on the African American, Black men, or would you say it's kind of equal between both races?
Yeah. So we're talking about small T trauma and big T trauma, right? So small T trauma is like really passive aggressive trauma. Like, let's say if you had a parent that works outside the home a lot, so you didn't really get that nurturing, sense of having a parent to guide you. That's a form of neglect, right? Or maybe you had a parent that did the silent treatment as a way of punishing you, but they never, physically abused you. That's still a form of abuse, right? Or the whole analogy, children are seen but not heard, right? That's disaffirming. So that's a small T trauma. Also, we see that in parents who are really high on scholastics or like sports for affirmations that they're a great parent. And what that tells a child is, in order for me to feel validated, seen, and heard, I need to do good at sports or at school, right? And that's where we get imposter syndrome later on in life coming through, or anxieties, right? And perfectionism. So big T trauma is when it's overt trauma, like sexual molestation, child abuse, trauma, sexual trauma in the form of rape. Those are things that you would say, okay, I'm looking at this person, I'm hearing their story. This person definitely is traumatized, right?
Right.
And then you would show a little bit more empathy towards that person, right? That person, you would kind of, change the way you talk, change the way how you deliver hard messages, right? But what we're noticing, and what I've noticed while I'm practicing with people, is that small T trauma and big T trauma are no different. They're just traumas, right? It's what makes the difference is, how do you react to that, right? So that's a two-fold loaded question. So what we need to really focus on is, how do Black men respond to being traumatized? Because they've been traumatized severely, right? It's been generationally passed down to where now their body reacts to trauma in a way of withdrawing and shutting down. And people think, okay, oh, Black men are not standing up, they're not doing these things. Well, when your body, when we talked about epigenetics, when your body is going against what you want to do, right? It's hard to come against that intentional defect of trauma that supersedes your own ability sometimes, because it's so DNA genetically embedded in you because something traumatic happened, right? Now, as it pertains to Black women or women of the diaspora, I think that what makes us not have that extra edge, because we're just as equally traumatized, is that we've had to show up, even in fear, even when things are not going right. We've had to push through that and own our voice, right? And so naturally, even in fear, we just show up. Like we say, okay, fear, I check you. And I'm still gonna have to do this, because just think about it, we've had to show up in so many disaffirming, inhumane, have babies that were taken away, at any beck and call, we could lose our husband, we can lose our loved ones, and we still had to show up, right? And so we just naturally have that caretaking mentality where that says, like, it's sacrificial for the greater good. I'll sacrifice everything, and that can work for us and that can work against us, right? And so everyone has a different trauma response to how they respond to trauma, right? And if it's how does it affect men more or women less, we're all traumatized. And that's what we have to take off the table, is that whose greater trauma is bigger. There's no comparison. Trauma is trauma, right? How do you react to trauma is what we need to start to addressing. And that's really the conversation, because I've never met a Black person who hasn't been traumatized. Okay, so I think we all get an A on that category, right? We don't need to talk about whose wounds are bigger, because we all hurting at the same time.
Right.
So the conversation needs to be about, how do you respond to trauma? What are your traumas? Okay, well, how's your family handled traumas? Not if you're traumatized or not.
Right. That's very important. I'm so glad that you said that, because I feel like that's the answer for everybody who I know I've talked to, especially at my job, because I work at a mental health facility. The conversation is always, oh, well, is that person having more trauma than the other, or it's not on the same level, so they just, being over dramatic or over emotional. And it's like, it doesn't matter how big or how small the trauma is. It's the fact that the trauma is there.
Yeah.
And it's not being resolved. And I don't think that conversation is being said enough.
Yeah. Because I feel like a lot of us, we try to compete with traumas, just have a competition. No, my trauma is way stronger than yours. No, my trauma is way stronger than yours. But we haven't been in each other's shoes to measure what someone else's trauma can do to them versus what it can do to us.
And we're so comfortable with locking it up.
Yeah.
I was going to mention that too. I was going to say, for Black men, I know, society always push for them to be tough, be a man, and just basically, lock and hold in, their emotions. So I was, basically wondering if that really, not really wondering, but, I was just analyzing if that really contributes to them having, mental health issues that go undetected.
I think it has a lot to do with, resiliency, right? I think having a resilient spirit in our community is praised, right? But really what we're praising is, oh, you're so strong, you can take a lot of trauma, let's keep traumatizing you because you're really stronger than us. And that's rooted in white supremacy, right? Because white supremacy doesn't care about Black lives mattering. It's evident in how the system is set up. We have always been extorted for our gifts and talents. And they don't care about the person behind the gifts and talents. They care about the productivity behind it and what you can create and do for them. So when we're having a wellness conversation, we also have to include that too. That this is not just because we're making a choice not to take care of ourselves. We were never taught how to take care of ourselves. Why would they care to teach us that, right?
Right.
And it's a privilege to take care of yourself, to be honest with you. Like, it's a privilege to have a therapist. It's even more of a privilege to have a Black therapist. There's only 4% of Black therapists, 96% other. That's not on that by accident. That's just systemic oppression, right? And it's evident. So it's just rooted around like, you know, how do I humble myself in my resiliency to be a different person to receive help, right? Because for us, it's different. We are strong when we are weak. We know how to be strong.
Mm-hmm.
We know how to show up strong. But it's in our weakness that we find our true strength.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. So is that why, as a Black woman, you decided to make it a conversation for Black men to have? Because it's a lot easier for them to relate to another person who is of their own. And really, like when you're saying that we have to be able, well, they have to be able to be humble enough, or in that position to be able to want to talk about it. Is that like you wanted to create a platform for them to be able to talk about it?
Yeah, and honestly, it's that intuitiveness of me, right? So, for me, taking big steps is affirming, right? Because it's speaking to my higher self. My lower self, I became a therapist because I wanted to like have my own hours. I've been taking my kids to practice, to school, be a really hands-on parent. But my higher self was like, yes, there's more. Like, we know you want to do all this, but we're gonna need you to answer this call of action, right? And so for me, because being a healer is generational, like I had a very different type of conviction that I could have went either way, right? But in my healing work, in understanding that we are all placed here for a purpose or for a purpose or a passion, right? It's more so around, okay, you can take 100 steps to get there, or you can tap into those epigenetic DNA characteristic traits that you already have, right? You're just using them in the wrong direction. And you can boss up. Like, so for me, it was like a trade-off. It was like, do I want to continue to operate in these survival mode skills? Because I know how to survive. I could write a book on how to survive, how to shut up, how to limit yourself, how to not speak up. Like, I was like in the dictionary for that. Or I can choose to be my higher self and step out into the unknown, but in a very familiar space, right? That's instinctual, right? So as I continue to like show up for myself, it's not about did I plan this, right? Was this plan for me, right? And so I just choose to take those 5 bold steps than those 100 scarcity ones. And so far, my depression has gone down. My anxiety has increased. My faith has been on a different level. My life has completely changed. And all these things are very scary, right? But they're also, if I'm really intentional about looking from the outside, looking in, they're so purposeful. I'm so full. I'm so thankful. I'm so happy. And it just feels natural to me.
I love that.
Right, I love that too. Like, how did you I know it's uncomfortable. Well, I won't say uncomfortable, but it's not the norm feeling all of these different types of happiness come all of a sudden, like you getting just out of that depression. I understand that same exact feeling. So how do you make it feel less uncomfortable?
Therapy, and really holding myself accountable to be healthy. Healthiness for me was negotiable. And that was again too rooted in those survival skills that was passed down to me, because women in my life for a long time put their own dignity and respect on a chopping block for the sake of others. So that's why I was saying, like, I could choose to do it the way that my ancestors has already always done. Like, I got the book on that. Or I can choose to, in this book of history, write my own chapter, right? And be the author of that instead of going off of outdated information that was rooted in survival mode. Like in my family lineage, I want to write the chapter on victory, right? I want to hold myself accountable for that and to that. And what that means is that I'm sacrificing myself, right? But at least it's a choice now. Like rather, I think one of the things that was triggering my depression so much was that I was suppressing a lot. Like I was suppressing a lot of my being. I was compromising myself and my integrity a lot. And that, excuse my French, that shit is it's toxic, right? So that's why I say for people of African descent, it's different for us. Mental health is different for us. It's about us not being able to self-express. We're self-expressing people. We're spirits more than we are human. And just with through colonialism, they never care to care about that. Because if when we tap into this space of being, then we're free from the system, right? And they don't want that. They want to keep it small, right? And they've created systems, pipeline to prison, sending threatening messages, subconsciously, subliminally. Like they know, what they can and can't do. But we're in that place of self-discovery of like past the fear. Because I always think I'm going to die all the time. I know that sounds crazy, but that's how fear embedded in my natural DNA that my instincts sometimes say, you might not want to say that because you can die. Mm-hmm. That is traumatizing to resonate with, right? Mm-hmm. And so, but it's a part of my heritage that is the truth, that DNA and genetically in my DNA characteristic traits, death was a part of owning your voice. And so that is there, that fear-based thinking is there. So I don't shut it out. I just tell it, yes, I know it's there, but I choose different. I choose to believe different. I choose to do different. And thank you for showing up for me and getting me through all those other tough times, right? When I played small. But in this chapter, I choose to go against the grain. And so it's me honoring, still respecting my ancestors and what they've given me, but we also empowering myself to do more.
Mm. A lot of people can relate to what you're saying, being like kind of not bounded, but your fear is always like at the back of your head. And for you speaking out on it can probably help someone listening to you right now.
Yeah, and I really love the way you said how you deal with it, because for a long time I noticed my patterns, and I would get mad at like the people who came before me. I'm like, why were you like this? Now I'm like this. But the way you said it, it's like, I acknowledge the fact that you're there, but I'm choosing different. And that's a better way of going about it, because as you said, you're still respecting your ancestors, but you are choosing different. So it's like not like you're fighting against yourself.
Right.
With your experience with mental health, what are some things you believe people should know about mental illness?
I think that what people should know is that mental illness is not a stigma that's negative. It's empowering, right? I think that when you're a healthy person, you're just a better person. And why would you not want to get better? I think that we do a lot of things superficially that affirm that within us, but why not take the deep dive to really get the answers? And I think that's what's what people fear darkness. But if you're African, darkness is a part of who you are. And it's not something for us to run away from because we know how to do that. It's something for us to lean into and welcome in different possibilities and just get excited about mental illness, right? And I think that mental illness is used as a catalyst to weaponize our experiences because we're a very spiritual being. Like, for example, schizophrenia, you hear voices, you see things, and a lot of African Americans, specifically men, get diagnosed with schizophrenia, right? But we also know that we're very spiritual people. We were the first people here on earth. Before there were cell phones, before there were stoplights, we had to go off our instincts. And so that also could be a way that you speak to your instincts, right? And I think that we shouldn't delve so deep on people who are non-African descent, who lack the awareness and knowledge and already come with their racial bias in diagnosing us, and to really, empower ourselves to start educating ourselves instead of educating ourselves through a system that doesn't care to heal us. So just empowering ourselves around the mental wellness conversation, and don't let the word mental illness, because illness is like you're sick, something's wrong with you, right? And being ill is the natural way to let you know that your immune system is down. That's all it is.
Right.
If you didn't get sick, you don't know that your body is fighting something. So illness is not a bad thing. It's a necessary thing. It's natural. And so once we take the stigmas out of that and we start to really think of it in a holistic way and get, really down on our roots about, okay, well, what can I do naturally to support myself? Is my stress level too high? Is my environment toxic? Am I keeping unhealthy relationships in my life? Am I working for a job I completely hate? Like, what is your body rejecting, right? Because you can cope and symptom and medicate all you want. You're still going to be sick. So why not take the route of like doing the work, right? I know it takes time, patience, and we're dealing with a whole nother level of stuff.
Right.
But I always ask my question, if not me, then who?
That's true. And I
if
love
not me, then who?
Because my dad always says that, you could have a problem, like there could be a burst pipe somewhere and water's leaking from the floor, and you cover the patch up on the floor, but the pipe is still burst and it's going to come up in a different way. And that's basically that's basically kind of related to it, because if you're depressed, using medication isn't going to take it away. It's just gonna make it come up in a different way, or some other way. So you really have to like deal with the actual problem. And it's basically a physical, it's kind of similar to a physical illness. Like if you have a cold, it's because, as you said, the bacteria is in your body that shouldn't be there. If you're going through something spiritually or mentally, it's because probably some type of energetic thing that you're doing that doesn't sit right with you. And you kind of remind me of like an African spiritualist. And it's like we were literally talking about in our other episode that we filmed earlier, like we need more therapists who don't go by the book of what they were taught in school, because this doesn't have anything to do with Black people. It's what the white man told them. And it's literally we're different. We come from different. We need therapists and doctors who understand what it means to be Black, that we have a different type of spirit, and who are proud to be Black. And just hearing you talk is just like, wow, like you're just embody that. You're like, I'm really into like medicine doctors, like the traditional ones, and you just remind me so much of one that like reads energy. And like you talking about your intuition, it's just like, okay, yeah, I definitely, the way you talk, it just comes up of you.
Thank you.
You're more than just the books and like what you learn in school, basically. Yeah.
And I think in my practice, as I was supporting Black people and finding different ways, and this is why the work, if you're really a person who is just in it for the accolades or the esteem or because you're interested, you're going to practice from that insight, right? And I think that one of the catalysts for me being so deep in my understanding is because I took it there. Before I'm a therapist, I'm a human first, right? And so I had so many people telling me things that I was and what was wrong with me and all those other things. And then I just chose to just drop it. It was so difficult to keep up with everybody's expectations of what they felt like I should do, right? And I still struggle with that, right? But it was just a crossroads that I think that we all have as a human, that, some way in our past, in our present, or in our future, we're going to be cautioned with a choice, right? And we choose every day we wake up to keep in disalignment or to become aligned, right? But I think that one of the things that in the Black community we really have helped heavily on, and I'm not going to be a fan favorite of this, is Jesus coming back and saving us, right? And listen, Jesus is here in 2020. I don't know if y'all need another, opportunity, but he's saying rise up. I got you covered. I don't know how much trauma y'all can take, but I can't take any more. Like,
I feel you.
to all my boys. And Jesus is not going to be a white man sitting down from heaven saying, and thou shalt, turn up. No, right now.
That's exactly what I'm like. I love the fact that you said that, because I have a love-hate relationship with like Christianity and the Bible, just because like some people rely so heavily on someone coming to save them, and they're like, no, we just have to deal with this. And it's like, no, let's like, it isn't, the power's in our hands, we can deal with it now. And I always refer to, like, I won't even classify myself as Christian, but it's like God save those who save themselves. It's like, listen, you can't put this on someone who you don't even know. And like, the main reason why I just have a love-hate relationship with the Bible, because it's just like, who put it together? It's not someone of our skin, and these are people who brainwash us, and like, I just don't trust, there's so much to learn from it, but to live my life and think that this Jesus person is coming to save me is just so crazy to me.
Because I'm glad, I'm glad you said the part about like, you don't trust the person who wrote this. We don't know who wrote this, because basically it's been translated so many times too. Because I do feel sometimes like, there's some stuff I really don't agree with, because it's like, it's been translated and then it's like white people that wrote it. So it's not really benefiting us all. In a way, I'm not sure if you understand what I'm saying.
No, I completely understand. And I prayed about it. I was, before COVID happened, I was like a Proverbs 31 woman up and through these streets. Okay. But I went to a multicultural church, and my pastor is white. And, he just didn't have the same energy as me. I really didn't know if Black Lives mattered to him. And I'm not going to go to a church where I don't know that. It was an integrity thing for me. And again, speaking back to my instinctual instincts, like that same feeling of I'm not safe is what came over me as I was still supporting this church. And so do I go against that because that's just all I know? And, for a long time, people have told me that that's the way that it is. Yeah, no. Like, so I had to step out on my own faith, right? And my own intuition. And I pray constantly for guidance, because I'm just naturally being drawn toward leadership, right? I didn't sign up for this job. I didn't fill out an application. I didn't have an interview. I just kind of like got the job from the spirits. They say, hey, Nia, we need you to pull up. I pulled up. It's been a party ever since. But that's how I have to process the fact that I'm going against culture, right? And I'm feeling my way through life rather than being guided by something else that's physical. And that's where our spiritual side comes in at. It's because everything that I'm experiencing in this 2020 era is 100% spiritual. Like I literally like am a spirit, and I'm allowing my spiritual instincts to come and I'm honoring them and I'm respecting them. And we get into arguments and we go back and forth, and they tell me what I'm doing wrong, and I have to show up in humility and apologize. But that's what prayer really is about. It's about getting into an intimate relationship with self, right? It's not about praying to a God to help us, get saved from this and him punishing us. And I had to do this work on myself, because how we see ourselves is how we have our relationship with our higher power. And so because I was condemning, because I used to, go off of being perfectionist, I thought I would praise God in that same way. And be like, oh, God's condemning me if I don't do this, and just be a scared little chicken, right? And so I had to realize that I am made in an image of God. And if God made me with my faults and all, and he knew the trials and tribulations that I was going to go through, then why am I not perfect? And why can't I show up in that space of perfection and own it, and not care about what people think about me, honoring and respecting myself? Because it's not about just having like frivolous confidence. To do this walk, you have to be confident. Someday you gotta go on Instagram and say, I am amazing. I just want to let everybody know that I am amazing, right? And I don't need Gucci, Prada, or all these other superficial things to make me worthy of that. I woke up like this, right?
Yeah.
I think a lot of times, because we allow like colonialism and just the art of money, like Black people, we're spiritual beings. We don't care about money. because money is attracted to us because it's attracted to our spirit. We are giving spirits, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's just really about self, relationship with self. If I could say, if anyone's going to take anything from this podcast interview, it's really just about showing up in true self and being a person of integrity. And let me tell you, that's really hard because you're going to have to come against a lot of ways of being that you didn't know that you compromise. And that's where that self-compassion piece comes in at, right? Because you can't condemn yourself for being human.
Yes.
It speaks against your entire being. You have to love yourself and be self-compassionate and love the wrong stuff, the dark stuff, the things you don't talk about, the way you are. Like for me, I had to own the fact that, hey, I like to be cute all the time. Even when I'm not cute, I like to be semi-messy cute. Now I can sit here and I can dwell on that and I can chop myself up, or I can be like, all right, just accept it, you know?
Right.
But that has helped me more than sitting here arguing with myself about why I'm like that.
I'm so glad that you said that because I think that's really the true issue, that we beat ourselves up so much over the flaws that we just can't help but have. And it's not that they're bad flaws, like it's not all of them are bad, it's just some of them are uncontrollable, and we have to find a way to control those and still say, hey, you're still good. You're still that girl. You may have that flaw, but you're still that girl.
The flaws are what makes us who we are, to be honest. If we didn't have some of our flaws, we wouldn't be who we are and actually learn from the experience that we've learned from, because I think our flaws take us to a journey that we're meant to be on in order for us to be the best version of ourselves.
Yeah.
Right.
And you also mentioned the relationship with self. Would you say that is part of the healing process that Black people need to be on, like mending the relationship with ourselves?
Absolutely. Yep. And all of that relationship with self goes back to how were you affirmed as a child? Because that is a key to the Black experience. Because before we even had a chance to know who we were, we had so many things coming at us. I detached from my body at 7. Okay. So I spent so much time outside of my body and in my brain in survival mode because it wasn't safe to be there. And so, I want people to picture a ladder, and I need you to come outside of your brain, right? And stop overthinking things, step into your body and focus on how you feel. And just focus also, it's okay and it's safe to feel, right? And if you don't feel safe with being okay to feel, then that's where the healing work comes in at, because why don't you? And who told you weren't safe? And what was your first introduction into not feeling safe? And are you perpetuating that environment? Do you have addictive tendencies to pain? Because when you befriend pain, because it's such a part of your life, you normalize it. Right. And for me, that was my relationship with fear. I was in a committed relationship with fear to the point where it was like, I justify it. Like, I can't do this because it's scary. Right. And when I started to speak against my lower self and really started to really step into my higher self, I had to get out of a relationship with fear. And it's just like a bad breakup, I had bank accounts. I bought houses, cars. I did everything rooted in fear. I had my children in fear, right? But I just had to get out of this relationship with it, and it was sad. It was like a dying of, in the spirit world we call it dying to your flesh. I had to die to a lot of superficial tendencies that were rooted in fear-based thinking. And I'm still on that journey, and I think that's a journey that I'm going to always continuously be on, because it's so embedded in my psyche and it's driven by society that Black women are not safe, right? We're constantly reminded about that. That too, self-love can't be selfish. It has to be selfless, right?
Yes.
So I'm just coming against a lot of fear-based thinking that society has told me I can't feel like that because that isn't a part of their agenda. So I think when you step into that healing space and you realize what you have to do to heal, and that's where that integrity piece comes in at, you hold yourself in integrity, like I come first, it's a different ask, right? Because what I've allowed myself to take off the chopping block is my value. It's not negotiable anymore. I had to like literally take that off the table. And so I show up in that now. Because one thing as a boundary for me is if I have to do something that speaks against my being or sacrifice that basic human right, then it's not for me. And I got to walk away from a lot of temptation, right? That's perpetuating that cycle.
Wow, it's really amazing that you say that, because and how you mentioned at the beginning how you came out of your body when you were 7. It's like it really is rooted in our childhood, because for long, like I've started doing my self-healing work just literally recently, and everything you're saying is just like reminding me, and it's like, okay, get back on it and everything. But for a long time, like I can't even remember how I felt at certain points in my childhood, and you saying it's because you're more in your head than your body really makes sense. And yeah, climb out of that ladder.
Right. It's just it's so crazy to me how you're saying this, because throughout the whole self-love journey that I've been on, those are the exact same things that I've been experiencing. Those childhood traumas really took effect when you start to really understand yourself, really try to find yourself, and the whole idea of self-acceptance and just self-love. All of those aspects come into play when you're trying to be truly happy within yourself. So you just saying that is so empowering, and I really hope that people really grasp that, because that really does take a journey. It took a while to really get into that same mindset. It took years. And I feel like it takes stepping out of the world and being in your own isolated self to get yourself on that ladder and climb down and really get yourself aligned.
Yeah.
And adding on to what Anne said, it's really like, at first I was like, okay, it's gonna take me 2 months and I'm gonna be good.
Right.
I've been here for like, I feel like I've only taken one step and it's been like 2 years. But the thing is, it's a life journey, like getting back to who you are. There's no end. Like you just carry on getting better and better. And I heard questions like people asking, when am I gonna get better? And it's like, you're gonna carry on getting better to the day you die, because it's a journey. It's nothing that like, okay, I'm here, there, then everything's good and my life is perfect. So yeah, that's one thing I had to realize about life. It's not just gonna be like one day I'm gonna wake up and roses are all around me. It's like they're gonna have to grow, and then sometimes some might die, and I'm gonna have to plant some more. And
everything is seasonal.
Exactly.
Yes.
Because I'm half a step in my journey, half step in, like my feet is up, it's not even touching the ground yet. But you can still see, like, if you look back in life and you can see the changes, you'll see, like, you kind of like climb a little bit the stairs, but it's not fully there yet. It's just, that's life. It's gonna take a while for you to see results.
Yeah.
Yes. So going back to your work with for Black men, for the King Mental Wellness brand, what are some things that us as Black women that we can do for Black men to help just awareness on their mental health? What are some things that we can do for them?
Yeah, that's a great question. Stand for yourself, right? I think that a lot of times, because Black women, we are natural caregivers, we tend to overly compensate ourselves in order to make Black men feel comfortable within their insecurities, and a lot of that also too is rooted in survival mode. But the best thing that you can do is become a healthy person for yourself, so that you can be a healthy vessel for other people. And also to, like, energy is contagious, right? You can't save everybody. That's not your job, right? But the only person that you can save is yourself, right? You can do that. You can show up for yourself in that way. And when you do that, it allows you to have self-compassion for others in a way that doesn't debilitate them. right? And I think that that's another issue of our us being women of integrity and of value. We don't really realize just how important the wellness piece is to us helping our men lead healthy, right? Because we have to get to a point in our community where being okay is not okay, right? And that starts by us just doing the work for them, allowing them the space to make mistakes, but not at your detriment, right? Saying like, these are boundaries for me that you have to respect. And if they don't respect them, then they lose you. You're a prize, right? And if they can't honor and respect that they have a prize, I mean, they already have bigger issues than you, and you're not there to solve them, right? But you are there to take care of yourself and to be a catalyst, because you don't even know how God uses you, right? And that's the thing that I had to realize in my dating life, right? That I was always trying to fix men, right? Not realizing that I needed to get money to do that, not have that in relationships. But I was so disaligned from my natural gifts and talents, and I didn't value that in myself, that I could, every single relationship I did leave, that man left better, right? I left toe up, but he left better.
Right.
And it was just around the values things, so on my healing journey, that isolation piece that you're talking to, I really had to release my codependent behavior, because I depended on men to be there for me emotionally because I couldn't show up for myself. I literally reserved that opportunity for them to show up for me emotionally. And so I've been detoxing. I haven't been dating for the last 2 years, and it's intentional. It's not like I don't get, opportunities or propositions. I literally say no to them, right? Because it's a distraction from me taking care of myself. And one of the things that I've held myself accountable to, and I want women to start holding themselves accountable to, if you can't sustain by yourself, you don't need to be in a relationship.
Oh, that's a word. That is such
with that, because like I know people say, oh, why aren't you in a relationship? Why aren't you in a relationship? Because I'm like, I just feel like I'm not ready to just be in that type of environment, because I probably don't even love myself. How can I allow myself to be in a relationship and love or like someone if I don't have that type of relationship with myself? And that's why I'm taking, I know I'm taking a break, quotation mark, because I need to really get to know myself, really be comfortable with myself in order for me to allow myself to be with someone.
And we are natural caregivers. I know I can't speak for everyone, but I know personally, just wanting to be there for that significant other that I'm with, knowing that me, myself is not together, but it's just seeing them in that state. It's like, even though I can't fix myself, let me fix you. Yeah. And it got to a point where that was really draining, because it's like, if you can't fix yourself, you're going to get all the way to 0% while he's at 50.
Yep.
And you're never going to be able to fully take care of him or help him with what he's going through if you're not helping yourself. So, yeah, definitely be single.
Yeah, and because what was happening to me is that they would get healthy and then look at me.
Yes.
What's wrong with me?
Yes.
Okay. I think I'm one. That was driving me more insane than anything. And that's why I feel like mental illness started to come into play for me, because I was making myself sick. I was loving so hard, right? And so I just had to, it was a values thing for me. And that's where the self-forgiveness piece comes in at, is because man, I was so codependent. And I was my own worst enemy. And it was really rooted around I just didn't love myself enough to think that I can meet my emotional needs. And I just would always reserve that for men to come into my life and just to show up on this white horse and save me. And I would just be a damsel in distress and all that. That's cool. But it's not sustainable.
It's so not.
It's not life off that.
It's not.
It's especially when you get to that point where you feel more depressed staying in that relationship,
right,
than once you're out. Because I know once it got to the point where you knew that you need to get out, and it was that you can just step out. You had that one foot, but that other foot is but let me, I can do it just for one more day. No.
You can't raise a man. You can't raise nobody.
Mm-hmm.
And
So
you can't help nobody if you cannot help yourself.
exactly. So, piggybacking of the that Malfoy asked, I wanted to know what are some things that Black men can do for each other to check on each other's mental health?
Yeah, become a safe person, right? And we talk about this in the Restoring the King platform around what does a safe person look like, right? And most importantly, like intimacy is around that, right? So a lot of men, Black men, they equate intimacy with sex because
Mm-hmm.
historically Black men have been used to procreate.
Mm-hmm.
We need workers, so they also too a part of that conversation is sexual assault in the Black community amongst Black men. So a lot of sexual assault that goes on, especially in childhood. And so also, doing the work around that, valuing yourself enough to be a safe, healthy person for others before you can lead them, because Black men are natural leaders. That's just a birthright that they're born with, but society stripped them from that. And so the way that they can be a healthy leader is just to do the work on themselves, like start holding themselves accountable. And I'm not saying you got to wake up, in this whole self-healing love journey like women do. We're more feminine in our energy, right? So we can do those things. But it's just waking up with the intention to be a better person. Like today I'm gonna wake up and I'm gonna do one thing good for myself, or today I'm gonna wake up and I'm gonna do one thing intentionally good for others. Like it starts that small, right? So I think that it's really more so around like how can I be a safe, healthy person for others, and enroll them in that conversation. But first and foremost, I'm always going to delve it back down to it's a self-introspective journey that Black men have to start signing up instead of ascribing to a system that is created to keep them on a hamster wheel that ends up with nothing. No results. There's so many Black kings that have never fully lived out their legacy because they've just been so codependent on systems. And so that's what I speak against that on my platform. And I think that's why kings are born out of it, because we speak to the leader in them, the natural leader in them. That, before the world told them there was something else, they were born with those natural characteristic traits. And so how do you tap back into that? And so just even being a part of the wellness conversation, stop feminizing the wellness conversation. It's not a feminine thing, it's a human thing. Everyone should talk about health, especially right now. Like that should be like a trending topic.
Right.
Not just, Black Lives Mattering because people are being killed. That's been a running thing that's been happening. It's just now in the forefront to where people have to like literally drink their own poison and they don't like how it tastes.
Mm-hmm.
But that isn't our fight. Our fight is healing, right? And we shouldn't get sidetracked by that.
Right. I'm so glad you said that because I think now with the whole Black Lives Matter going on, you can see signs that therapy really needs to be happening.
Mm-hmm.
You can see signs that there are really true, I know illness is not the best word to say it, but there's really true mental issues that are going out into the world that we're not getting all the help on. Instead, we're so used to just taking it out as far as violence is concerned,
Yep.
but we really need to have a conversation about it.
Mm.
So with that being said, what signs have you noticed that somebody might need therapy?
Right now, you turn the news on, how much are you consuming? How disconnected are you from your family? How much, are you normalizing about your struggles and your pains? How much are you not having a conversation around it? Some signs of that is constant distress, or even just withdrawal from that anything is happening. Like if I have a conversation with someone in 2020 and they're not fazed by anything, I know they have an emotional disconnect, and that's not healthy. So what that's telling me when I talk to a person like that is that, wow, this person has mastered the art of being emotionally disconnected. They literally don't have empathy for people. That person's very dangerous, right? And
Right.
that's not strength when you do stuff like that. That's abusive tendencies, that's toxic ways of being. And it's so rooted in denial. That's historical, right? That is an outdated mindset and coping skill to attach to during this time. But we talked about epigenetics, people are naturally into that. But if you're unfazed by 2020, Need a therapist. Like, you need a therapist. Like, don't pay your car note. Don't pay your house. Whatever you need to do. Go get a therapist because 2020 is real.
It's too real. I always say 2020 is the
for trauma. Yes. If you've experienced it, like I said, I have never met a Black person who wasn't traumatized. Drop it. So every Black person should be in therapy. Every Black person should have like a coach or something. Every Black person should be having a wellness conversation at their dinner table. Like, it is not about what are the signs and symptoms. It's about, when am I really going to go get help? Yeah. We are all traumatized.
Yes.
Definitely agree. And with that being said, how can someone go about finding a mental health therapist, or what type of therapy they need?
So there's different ways of healing. Like I said, we're going to take it back to, for Black people, it's health. So sometimes that will be going to your doctors for a checkup, right? Checking to see if you're physically okay. After that's done, right? Because a lot of us do not go to the doctors. Then it's checking in with a confidant, right? Like, you always have those people who are healthy people, and we can designate them. You can even Google, find a therapist in my area. I recommend finding a Black therapist who's woke. If you don't have access to those therapists, social media has made it so you can connect with them. You can even connect with me, and we talk about those things, and you can take that information to your therapist, because sometimes a lot of the insurance that people carry, they don't have Black therapists on their panels, and so there's a deficit. And so even taking that information, and like, when you do find a holistic leader, so for Black people, I wouldn't just stick to therapists, because there's that stigma, right? And if Black therapists are not available to you, consider life coaching, consider spiritual coaching. That's in alignment with your spirituality, not with religion. Consider a wise person, right? We have wise people too, but in the manner in which you're feeling better. Because some people practice and do things out of their scope of practice, that if it doesn't, it goes back to instinctual, right? You have, for me to find my therapist, I had to take the life coaching route first, because I'm a therapist. And so I would literally sit in people's offices like, you're going to do this next, and you're going to do that next, and you're going to tell me this, you're going to tell me that. And so to get ahead of myself, I had to take the life coaching route, because I already knew the modalities and theoretical basis that the therapist was going to come from. Right. So after I did with the whole life coaching round, I went to the extreme. I finally landed a therapist where, I'm from the hood. I'm unapologetic about that. My humble beginnings definitely is a part of me. Right. And that's fully me accepting myself. And so she speaks hoodology. I can cuss. Culturally centered, languages with her. And so she feels natural to me. Right. Now, she may not be natural for someone else, but when she said a ratchet word, I was like, you're her.
Yeah. It makes space. And I feel like, having a therapist, you should be comfortable around them to be you.
Yeah, because I don't want to come in here and sound like, oh, I'm just talking bad about some type of people, but talking about your things that you've been holding on to for a long time with someone you're not comfortable with, or someone that you can't relate to in a certain way, doesn't make you want to do it, and it can make the situation even more traumatizing. So that's why having Black therapists who speak hoodology is very important, because Black people need therapists, and most of us speak this language, so we need people who speak that language. And the fact that you can be that for someone is amazing.
Yeah, it's a blessing. I'm happy I found her. My connections really helped me. I actually did an event with her, and I just prayed about it. See, the ancestors answered me, and her name came up 3 times.
Wow,
3 times.
It was
That's amazing. That's how you knew it was meant. Like, she was meant for you. Yeah.
And I wanted to also say, you said like we should get but you mentioned life coaching and others, but would you recommend having a support group as well?
Absolutely. I call it your tribe, right? Your council. So before I can get to self-sabotaging, which we all know how to do eloquently, there's 7 people I have to go. And so if someone checks me on social media, hey, Nia, can't post that way. That's a little too radical, or get a phone call, hey, just checking in on you this week to see how you doing, because of my suffering in silence, I will be going through so much and I just dip out. I just disappear, right? So I got that person that'll just call me and be like, hey, I've heard for you in a long time, right? I have a life coach too. My life coach teaches me about life, right? Because I came from a background where emotional intelligence wasn't something that we gravitated off of because we were in survival mode. So there's a lot of life lessons that I should have gotten as a child that I didn't get, that sometimes I need someone to be like, hey, in this part of your life you're screwing up and this is the reason why. But I feel like life coaches, my life coach specifically, he's a male. He acts more like a father figure to me. So it's kind of like, hey, let me sit you down and have this conversation with you about value. Hey, let me sit you down and have you. So, in that respect, he supports me. Now, my therapist is more the therapeutic person. And, like I said, she speaks about hodology, and so she can connect those dots for me a lot more. There's a skill to that's taught in school that I think that's what makes therapists different from life coaches, that actually is a skill. And so she can take it back to the root cause of it. And then my life coach really allows me space to understand how it manifests. And then I have a mentor, and she's a badass Black woman attorney, and she just tells it to me straight. And I gotta boss up because I know I have. She's my accountability person, but she delivers a hard message in a necessary way, and makes me own my value in a way that I don't. I think that because my mom didn't really honor and respect herself in that way, she just can't give me that, right? And that's okay. And then I have a business coach, right? And she's all about like stop extorting yourself, right? Because I will give away my whole life for free and worry about why I ain't got no money in the bank, right? And so she could tell me, hey, this is why you don't have money in the
bank. Right. So with the teachings and the advice that your life coach and your therapist and your mentor have given you, how have you used those into providing mental health services to others?
I've realized that it's an embodiment of a lot of things, that wellness and holistic practitioners are a small piece of the pie. They're not everything. They're not the answer. They're not, like we talked about, that Jesus coming down from heaven and saving you. They're a part of the piece of the pie that you need to go on your journey. And one of the things that I've realized, like, you can't collect people, their experiences. And that the most important thing is to honor and respect the time that person's in your life, and for what reason and for what season, right? You cannot, because we live in such a scarcity mindset, we want to take and own people, right? Even in our relationship. When a relationship is expired, we talk about what used to be rather than what is, right? And so that's the hard part about letting go, and really knowing that you cannot hold on to people. So to answer your question, is really around like distinguishing what that person is there for, loving on them, allowing them to love on you, but also knowing that sometimes people have expiration dates, right? Or some people are going to stick by your side, for a long time. Like I've had my best friends, I've had them for 10 years. Some people have best friends from childhood, right? You just evolve with that person. So if you're able to evolve with those people in your life, then they can stay. But if there's going to come a point where the relationship needs to look different, and so you have to welcome in that change.
So you did mention that having a tribe was important. How does someone go about finding a tribe for themselves? Because
great question.
Yeah, this isn't something that we know how to do as Black people. Even myself, I struggle with this. I'm like, I do need people in my life, but how do I go about finding those people?
Yeah. So anyone who's supposed to be in your tribe, and I want you guys to listen to this very closely, because this wisdom came at a very high price. You have to find people who want the best for you with zero expectations. It can't be transactional. Because when a person has an agenda before they go into your life, they're going to focus on that agenda. But if you're the agenda for that person, then they're always going to take care of you.
Right. It's that unconditional support.
That is unconditional love.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's been hard for me finding like a mentor, basically. So like, it's a good advice. I'm gonna look into that. But for me, maintaining and actually like having a mentor has been a hard battle, basically.
Yeah. Pray for it and expect it to come.
Yeah.
You have to literally show up intentionally. Like, today I'm going to find my mentor. If it doesn't happen, okay, today I'm going to find my mentor. You have to literally be intentional about that life is happening for you, not against you. And so everything you ask for is going to be given in a manner in which it's ready to receive. You can't get hung up on what that looks like. You can't get hung up on when you receive it. You have to just wake up knowing that you're going to get it one day.
Right. I think a lot in our generation and just as college students in general, we hold that inside because when we walk out on campus or we walk out in class, we have to have this persona that things are okay. Or we get all of these questions like, what's wrong? What's wrong? What's wrong? And we're not comfortable with saying it. And it's so hard to find that one support person who knows exactly what you're going through and who's just able to open up to you. But that's why I find it so great that social media, there are positive platforms that even when they're not in your face, one post that's like a self-love affirmation or just something where it's gravitating to you, it can help just about the same as someone who's right in front of you telling you the same thing.
That's true.
And I'm so happy that as a Black woman who is talking to us saying these things, because like it makes it like I can literally see myself healing, because like I see a Black woman giving me this advice, and it makes it a lot easier. So I would recommend people getting therapists that look like them or look like someone who even raised them or someone who they can relate to in a way.
Right.
Is there anything else anyone wanted to mention? Is there anything that you feel like you haven't touched upon but you do want to speak on?
I think we had like a nice, segue of as much as I can give you. Give you it. It's just a call to action, and people think that we got to be out there on the picket line. No, you gotta start with yourself. Start in your home. Start small, but dream big. If it's not going to be you, then at least plant the seeds, right? So we all and no ask is too great. No duty is going unnoticed. It has to be a collective consciousness that we all go in there knowing that we're going to do something. We don't need, Senator Harris, I'm speaking from the States, to come in here and be our Black Jesus. Okay, she's a Black woman going through her own stuff. But what we can do is we can get out there and we can vote, right? We can work, and if a policy and procedure doesn't fit our spirit, we can honor our spirit, right? And just start doing those different things that are going to perpetuate a cycle being broken. Like, we can't keep running scared, because if we keep running scared, if nothing changes, nothing changes. It's just so black and white. And I think that we try to make things about this very like, oh my God, we gotta do all this. Nah. A movement starts with a change of mind. A change of mind starts with you valuing yourself. You value yourself means you gotta sit down and ask yourself some real questions. So just show up being honest.
I like that. So for those who want to change the dynamic, change the perspective of how mental health is viewed in the world, and for those who want to, become a therapist but don't necessarily have the tools to do, or they don't have the resources to go to school, like what advice would you give to them so they can still at least advocate in some type of way?
Do the work on yourself first. Right? Just like I went to school and I had to learn all these different ways of practicing, right? that's my journey that I had to do in order to come to you guys from a place of, and I've been on the other side and I know what it didn't do for me. Right. So that's another thing that people can take from this is like, we're Aboriginal, we're instinctual. Like, you can't get a degree for that. They don't even know parts of us to even tap into that, to even teach us that. Right. So it's a value thing. Everything, I'm gonna drive it back to value. If we don't start valuing the fact that we were the first human beings to grace this earth, that we were hand designed, chosen, picked, pigmentation and all, to be true leaders, we don't need a degree for that, because that's our privilege. Our privilege is that we were the first and we will be the last. And it's scientifically proven, it's historically proven. And if we choose to ignore those things and gravitate to things that are in front of our face, then shame on us, right? But we can step out and we can be bold and we can be radical and we can just show and just be authentic. That's our plight. Be yourself.
Yeah, love that advice. Y'all hear that, everybody? Be yourself.
So much. Like, thank you so much. And yeah, we did want to kind of wrap this up, since I feel like you dropped so many gems and everything. And we did want to let you tell our guests where they could find you, your social media, so in case they, you know, some people don't know how to go find a therapist and one is right there talking to them, so they might want to reach out to you. How would they be able to reach out to you?
Absolutely. So LinkedIn is where a lot of my following is. I'm always like posting things on LinkedIn. I also have Instagram handles. Ridgle Consulting is one, and then I have Restoring the King is another. You can get to my private page from my Ridgle Consulting page, because I'm very transparent. Like, if you choose, you know, me to be your therapist, then you need to know like behind the scenes of how that person lives their life. I think that's really important, because you're trusting that person with your mind. And so I'm really transparent in my life. Like, I'm a human first before I'm a therapist. And I also think that when people are looking for a therapist, ask those questions, right? Because you're giving that person authority over your life, and that matters. So, you know, don't walk into a therapeutic space powerless. Walk in there becoming powerful, because that's a safe space to do that in. And if you don't feel powerful when you are in your therapeutic space, then that isn't a healing space for you.
You love all
I heard it first, people.
We love the gems that you just dropped. Do you have like any questions for us?
No, I just have like words of affirmation. I think you guys are doing an awesome job. I've listened to past podcasts. I think this is definitely timely. Keep putting out content, you know, keep asking questions, keep dropping in people DMs, keep being bold, right? The bigger the ask, the more people can feel compelled to say yes, because they're just so surprised that you even asked, right? And so I had to learn that. So keep asking, literally. Keep asking. The worst thing you can get used to is people saying no, and so what?
That's true.
Right.
I was so surprised when you say yes, because like the work you do, I felt like, I remember like setting up the Young Intellect page on Instagram and seeing your post, and it was one of the first things I reposted. I was like, and I didn't even think to ask you then. It was like, weeks later, I was like, wait, if I asked her, what would she say? I was like, she's probably not even gonna read this, but I'm gonna ask it anyway. And you responded. I was like, wow. So that is like amazing that you say that. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
We just never know. Like, you just have to try sometimes.
Shoot your shot.
Yes.
We just thank you so much for just spreading all just words of wisdom and encouragement, and just empowering Black women and Black men to really take mental health seriously, but also really dig deep into themselves. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
So thank you for joining us today on the Young Intellect Podcast. We hope you enjoyed the show, and tell a friend about us. Make sure you take care of yourself and your mind.
Cause I'm a young intellect. I'm a young intellect. I'm a young intellect. I'm a young intellect.